The rain hadn't stopped for hours, and by the time Claire Mercer's rental car wound its way up the gravel path, the windshield wipers were slapping like frantic metronomes, barely keeping up with the deluge. Headlights bounced off dark, wet trees, their twisted branches pressing close as if they wanted to reach inside the car and pluck her from her seat. When the house finally emerged from the shadows, it looked less like a home and more like something unearthed, an old carcass left too long in the open air. The Hollow House. That's what locals had called it in the scattered notes she found, buried in online forums. Nobody seemed to know its real name, or rather, nobody wanted to remember. Claire leaned forward, squinting through the water-streaked glass at the towering structure. It was older than she'd imagined, larger too. A hulking Victorian relic, its steep roof and narrow windows resembling watchful eyes. Some windows were boarded, others half open as though the house had been interrupted mid-scream. The porch sagged in the middle, its banister slouched, eaten away by rot. She killed the engine and sat in silence for a moment, the rain hammering the roof. She had told herself 1,000 times on the long drive that this was a job, nothing more. She was a photographer. Old houses, especially ones with dark folklore attached, sold well in print. Ghost hunters, history buffs, collectors. There was money in dread if you packaged it right. Still, the air here felt different. Thick. Too thick. Her phone buzzed against the console, startling her. A text from Adam. "Did you make it? Don't disappear on me." Claire smiled faintly and typed back. "Made it. Just rain and mud so far." She left out the part about the way her skin prickled when she looked at the windows, or how the house seemed to exhale when she pulled into the drive. Shouldering her bag, she stepped out, into the rain. It was instantly everywhere, soaking her jeans, flattening her hair. She jogged across the yard, boots squelching in the muck, and mounted the creaking steps. The door was unlocked, just as promised. Inside, the air was colder than outside, and, for a brief, stomach-dropping moment, she thought she'd stepped into a cavern. The entryway swallowed her flashlight beam, the dust and shadows scattering the light into trembling fragments. The smell hit next, old wood swollen with moisture, mold clinging to the walls, the faint copper tang of rust, or was it blood? "Okay," she whispered aloud, voice barely above the rain's hiss. Nothing new, just an old house. Empty. Her footsteps echoed as she explored the first floor. The wallpaper peeled in long curling strips, exposing plaster beneath that. Looked diseased, mottled with dark patches. The furniture that remained was skeletal, a chair missing its back, a table that leaned on one leg like a drunk. The floor dipped and shifted under her weight, each step a gamble. But it was the silence that unnerved her most. Not just quiet, but the wrong kind of quiet, like the house was listening. Even the rain seemed muted once she crossed the threshold. She wandered into what had once been a living room. The fireplace yawned wide and black, filled with crumbled brick and debris. Above the mantel, a portrait hung crooked, a family of 5, their faces faded with time. Mother, father, 3 children. None of them smiled. Their eyes, indistinct yet heavy, seemed trained on her. She raised her camera, trying to shake the unease. The shutter clicked, the sound exploding in the silence. She took another shot, zooming in on the family's hollow stares. And then she heard it. Soft, unmistakable. A whisper. It was so faint she almost convinced herself it was just the house settling, the rain seeping through cracks. But the hairs on her arms rose. "Leave." Claire lowered the camera, throat tight. "Hello?" Her voice barely carried. Nothing answered. The silence stretched so long that she laughed nervously, shaking her head. Stress. That's all it was. She took the stairs next. They groaned beneath her boots, each step a shuddering complaint. The second floor smelled worse, wet rot and something sour, like spoiled milk. Doors lined the hallway, some closed, others gaping. She peeked into the first, a bedroom, torn. Curtains hung over the window, fluttering even though the glass was intact. A child's toy lay in the corner, a small wooden horse, one wheel snapped off. She crouched, lifted it. The paint had peeled away, but faint red stripes still clung to the wood. She set it down quickly, heart tripping in her chest. When she stood, she realized the door was almost shut behind her. She hadn't touched it, her breath snagged in her throat. Slowly, deliberately, she pushed it open again. The hinges screamed. Something thumped in the next room. Claire froze. She strained her ears, pulse hammering in her temples. It hadn't been the house groaning. It was a weight hitting the floor. She moved back into the hall, flashlight trembling in her hand. The door across the way was ajar. Shadows pooled beneath it, darker than the rest of the hallway. Animals, she whispered to herself. Could be raccoons or cats. But the whisper she'd heard earlier returned, echoing in her head. Leave. Her hand shook as she pushed the door open. The beam of her flashlight cut across the room. Empty. Only not empty. In the far corner, a wardrobe loomed, its doors just slightly apart. A thin crack of darkness inside. Her throat tightened. Every instinct screamed not to approach, not to touch it, but her feet moved anyway. The lens of her flashlight landed on the wood. The wardrobe was old, carved with curling patterns like vines. She placed her hand on the handle. Cold. Too cold. She pulled. The door shrieked open. Nothing inside, only the smell, thick, pungent, like soil turned over after rain, laced with something sharper. Decay. Claire staggered back, pulling her shirt up over her nose. The stench seemed to follow her, coil into her lungs. She shut the wardrobe quickly, chest heaving. Her phone buzzed again. The sound made her jump violently. She yanked it from her pocket. Another text from Adam. Everything okay? You're not answering. She typed quickly. I'm fine. Place is creepy, but nothing major. As she hit send, something brushed. Her hair. Claire spun, flashlight beam whipping across the walls. Nothing there, just dust motes drifting. She laughed, but the sound was brittle, false. Okay, Claire, enough for tonight. She retreated down the hall, back to the stairs. Her boots clattered too loud against the wood, the echo chasing her. She reached the front door, grasped the knob, then froze. The door was locked. She hadn't locked it. Her hands shook as she twisted it. The knob rattled, but wouldn't budge. Panic surged hot in her chest. She checked the windows. Boarded. Too high to break without hurting herself. The back door? She sprinted to the kitchen, heart battering against her ribs. The door there was swollen shut, wood fused to the frame. She threw her shoulder against it. Nothing. She leaned against the counter, gasping, rain hammering outside like mocking applause. Her flashlight beam caught something carved into the wall near the sink. Words, gouged deep into the wood. We don't. Let them leave. The letters glistened as if freshly cut. Claire stumbled back, bile burning in her throat. And then, footsteps, above her. Slow, deliberate. Someone was in the house. Claire didn't breathe at first. She didn't dare. The footsteps were deliberate, each one groaning through the ceiling as if whoever, or whatever, was upstairs wanted her to know it was moving. Her flashlight trembled in her grip, beam shaking, wildly across the moldy kitchen walls. She tried to swallow, but her throat was too dry. She was alone. She was supposed to be alone. She backed toward the counter, her boots scuffing the warped floorboards. Hello? She called, though her voice came out thin, quivering. This house is supposed to be empty. If someone's here, just say something. The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than any sound. Claire's stomach twisted. Every cell in her body screamed at her to leave. But the front door refused her, and the kitchen door was swollen shut like a wound. She could smash a window, maybe, but would she make it before? The thought dissolved as the footsteps began again, this time heading toward the staircase. She bolted, not up the stairs, she wasn't suicidal, but to the living room where her bag sat slumped near the door. Her tripod, camera, and most importantly, the iron tire lever she'd grabbed earlier in case of animals. She snatched it. Up, gripping the cold metal until her knuckles whitened. The stairs groaned now, each step echoing through the house. Whoever it was, they were coming down. "Stay back," Claire barked, forcing strength into her voice. I have a weapon." The sound halted. She held her breath, sweat prickling down her back. The flashlight beam hovered on the staircase landing, dust motes trembling in the cone of light. Nothing, no figure, no face. And then, with slow precision, the steps resumed. Claire lifted the lever higher, chest heaving. She counted the creaks. 7, 8, 9. Her nerves stretched so tight she thought she might split. The beam caught movement. A hand. Her heart lurched. But when the rest of the figure followed, her stomach dropped in confusion. It was a child, a boy, maybe 10 or 11, barefoot and filthy. His clothes hung loose, threadbare and soaked with stains too dark to name. His hair clung in greasy tufts to his forehead, but it was his eyes that rooted her in place. They were wide, hollow, wrong. The boy stopped, halfway down the stairs, head tilted, watching her with a strange, unnatural stillness. Claire's throat worked. "Hello?" The boy said nothing. His lips parted, then closed again as if testing whether he remembered how to use them. Are you lost? Do you live here?" No response. Her hand tightened on the lever. The house had been empty for decades, boarded up and sold 3 times over without anyone staying longer than a week. What child would... The boy stepped down one more stair. His foot made no sound. Claire's breath came faster. She raised the lever higher. "Stay there, I mean it." The boy blinked. His mouth twitched, as if suppressing a smile. Then he whispered, soft as breath, but clear enough to slice through the silence. "They never let us leave." Her skin went cold. The boy turned sharply, darting back up the stairs with inhuman speed, his body bending unnaturally as he vanished into the dark hallway above. Claire's legs trembled. For a long, aching moment, she couldn't move, couldn't think. The silence returned heavier than before, pressing down on her chest. "Jesus Christ," she whispered, lowering the lever slightly. Her phone buzzed. Again. The sound nearly made her scream. She dug it out with shaking hands. Adam again. "Why aren't you answering?" "I'm getting worried." Her thumbs fumbled over the keyboard. "There's someone here. A child. Something's wrong. I don't..." The phone went black. Battery dead. "No, no, no." She shook it, pressed the power button. Nothing. She'd charged it fully before leaving. It should have lasted hours. The lever nearly slipped from her grip as a sound echoed above her. Not footsteps this time. Laughter. High-pitched, shrill, but stretched thin, distorted, as though funneled through rotten wood. Claire's stomach heaved. She swallowed bile and forced herself to move, to think. She couldn't stay here. If the doors wouldn't open, she'd break a window, cut herself out if she had to. She darted back into the kitchen, aiming the flashlight at the narrow glass above the sink. The pane was coated in grime, but intact. She yanked open a drawer, found rusted utensils, broken wood. Nothing sharp enough. Her gaze landed on the cast iron pan on the counter. Heavy. That would do. She gripped it, swung hard. The glass shattered. With an ear-splitting crack, shards raining down onto the counter. Wind and rain roared in, cold against her face. Relief surged, until she realized. There was no opening. Where the window had been, there was now only blackness. Not the storm outside. Not the yard. Just void. Endless, suffocating black, stretching in every direction. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She staggered back, nearly tripping over the broken glass. The house wasn't letting her leave. The whisper came again, curling around her ear, though no one was near. Stay with us." The air grew colder. Frost climbed the broken frame, spiderwebbing across the counter. Her breath fogged in the flashlight beam. And then, footsteps behind her. She spun, flashlight beam slicing through the kitchen. Empty. But the broken toy horse from the upstairs bedroom now sat on the counter, its red stripes gleaming wetly. Claire's pulse thudded painfully. She backed into the hall, clutching both lever and flashlight. She had to see. She had to know what this place was. Her boots dragged her back toward the stairs, no matter how much her mind screamed to stop. If the boy was real, or whatever he was, maybe he knew. Maybe he wasn't the only one. The stairs loomed before her, swollen with shadow. She climbed, each groan of the wood sounding like a warning. The air thickened, wet and metallic, like a butcher's block left out too long. The hallway above stretched endless in her beam, wallpaper sagging, doors yawning open like hungry mouths. A whisper drifted from the far end. "Claire?" Her stomach clenched. It had said her name. She crept forward, hands slick with sweat on the lever. The whisper continued, threading through the hall, sometimes ahead of her, sometimes behind. "Help us. Stay. Don't leave." Her beam swept across one open door, and she froze. Inside, 5 small chairs were arranged in a circle. Each chair held a toy, a doll with one eye missing, a stuffed rabbit with its head torn, the wooden horse. Her stomach dropped as she realized there were 5 figures too, not toys, children. They sat slumped in the chairs, skin gray, eyes blank. Their bodies were broken in subtle ways, arms bent wrong, spines curved, throats bruised purple. They didn't move, didn't breathe. Yet she knew they were watching. Claire's legs threatened to give out. She raised the lever weakly. "Stay away from me." The children's heads tilted in unison, slow and unnatural. Then, one by one, their mouths opened. The sound that poured out was not a scream, not a word, but a chorus of whispers, overlapping, clawing at her skull. "Never leave, never leave, never leave." Her vision blurred. The beam shook wildly. She stumbled backward, crashing into the hall wall. The whispers surged louder, rattling her teeth, burrowing into her brain. She bolted, down the hall through the dark, her boots pounding like gunfire. She didn't know where she was going, only away, away from that room, from those voices. She burst through another doorway, slammed it behind her, chest heaving. The room was pitch black until her flashlight found the walls. It was a nursery. Broken cribs lined the room, their mattresses rotted, stuffed animals gnawed by time. The wallpaper here was painted with faded moons and stars, the kind meant to comfort babies. Instead, it looked diseased, the stars sagging like tumors. Claire's light found the crib in the center. Something lay inside. She approached, stomach twisting. It was a doll, a porcelain infant with cracked skin, its eyes shattered. Its mouth hung open, jagged, as if someone had tried to carve it wider. The whisper returned, louder now, curling through the nursery. "We were theirs. Now you are too." The doll's head turned toward her. Claire screamed. The flashlight clattered from her grip, rolling across the floor, beams spinning wildly across the walls. She scrambled, hands slapping against splintered wood. When she found the light again, she whipped it upward. The doll was gone. But the crib was no longer empty. A figure loomed inside, taller, stretched grotesquely, its head bowed, its body bent to fit the crib. Long gray hands clutched the railing, nails black and hooked. Slowly it raised its head. Its face was wrong, stretched skin, hollow sockets where eyes should be, a mouth sewn shut with coarse black thread. Claire couldn't breathe. The lever slipped from her fingers. The creature's head tilted, listening, and then it began to move. Its stitched mouth cracked, one thread snapping loose. The sound was wet, tearing. It crawled from the crib, unfolding far too many limbs. Claire stumbled back, grabbed the lever, and swung blindly. The iron connected with a sickening crunch, the thing shrieking soundlessly as it toppled against the wall. She bolted from the nursery, her scream joining the whispers, echoing through the hollow house. Claire's scream tore through the hollow corridors, raw and jagged. The house seemed to drink it in, swallowing the sound before it could escape. Her boots hammered against the warped floorboards as she fled, the flashlight beam slashing wildly across mold-blackened walls. Behind her, the nursery door thudded once, twice, then silence. Her breath rasped. ragged and shallow, every inhale heavy with mold and iron. She barely realized her cheeks were wet until she tasted salt. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't stop, couldn't think. The only thought thrumming in her skull was out, out, out. She burst into another hallway she didn't remember from before. It stretched impossibly long, doors lining both sides like sentries. Each knob gleamed wetly in her light, as though freshly licked. The wallpaper here peeled in thick, curled slabs, exposing timber that writhed as if alive. Claire slowed, chest heaving. She was disoriented. The house was changing, folding itself around her. She couldn't trust the layout, couldn't trust her memory. "Get a grip," she whispered, clutching the tire lever with slick hands. "You can—" A door creaked open down the hall. Her light caught it, the second on the right, just barely. Ajar. A sliver of darkness leaked into the corridor, thicker than shadow, almost liquid. "Not this time," Claire muttered, forcing steel into her shaking voice. She stepped back, edging toward the opposite wall. She would not open it. She would not. The door yawned wider on its own, and something stepped out. Not the boy, not the stitched thing from the nursery. This figure was taller, gaunt, its face swathed in shadow. Only its hands showed, long, bony fingers that scraped the wall as it walked. The nails were ragged, caked with something dark. It moved with unbearable slowness, each step deliberate, savoring. Claire's breath snagged. She raised the lever, muscles screaming with terror. "Stay away!" The figure paused, head cocking at an unnatural angle, as though curious. Then, in a voice both distant and intimate, it rasped, "You opened the house." Her blood iced. "What? You woke us. You saw." The voice wasn't male or female. It wasn't even human. It was wood groaning, nails tearing, whispers layered into one. Claire's grip faltered. I don't want this. I don't want you. I'll leave. I'll never come back, I swear." The figure's head tilted. Further. They all say that. Its form began to blur, stretching against the walls like smoke made of meat. Claire choked back a sob and ran, flashlight beam jittering across endless doorways. The corridor shifted beneath her feet, tilting. She stumbled, slammed into the wall. The wood was damp, pulsing faintly under her palm like a heartbeat. She gagged and pushed off, sprinting again. Her muscles burned, lungs tearing. The hall bent, sharply, spitting her out into a chamber unlike any she'd seen before. The ceiling vaulted high, lost in shadow. The walls were paneled with black wood, carved in spirals that seemed to twist when stared at too long. At the center stood a massive table, and on it, Claire's stomach turned violently. Bodies. Not skeletons, not corpses as they should have been after decades. These were preserved, skin gray-blue, eyes wide open. A family of 5. Mother. Father, 3 children. The same family from the portrait downstairs. They lay arranged as if still seated for dinner, plates of rotten bone in front of them. Their mouths were sewn shut with the same coarse black thread. Claire's knees weakened. Her beam flickered across each face. The father's eyes glared at her with hateful intensity. The mother's hand clutched the table so hard her nails had snapped off. The children, oh God, the children, looked frozen mid-scream, their stitched lips trembling. She staggered back. The flashlight slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor, its beam now fixed upward. Shadows writhed across the ceiling, forming shapes that twisted like worms in meat. And then the voices began. Not whispers this time, but groans, moans, words spilling from behind sewn mouths without lips parting. Hungry. Stay. Join. Claire clamped her hands over her ears, shaking her head violently. No, no, no. But the sound was inside her skull, burrowing deep. The figures on the table stirred. The father's hand twitched. The mother's sewn lips quivered, threads snapping one by one. The children convulsed, their eyes locking onto Claire with wet, furious intensity. Something broke inside her. She snatched the flashlight, bolted through a side door, and slammed it shut behind her. She was in another staircase, spiraling down into darkness. Each step was slick, coated in something slimy that squelched under her boots. The air grew damp, heavy with rot and salt. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a basement. The walls here weren't wood. They were stone, rough and wet, as though carved from beneath the earth. Chains hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly, though no wind touched them. Rusted tools littered the floor. Hooks, saws, hammers, all caked in ancient filth. Her stomach churned. She lifted the beam and froze. The boy stood in the corner. He watched her silently, hollow eyes glinting. His voice, when it came, was a rasp of old leaves. They fed us to the house. Claire shook, unable to speak. They brought us here. One by one. The walls ate. The walls remember. Her throat tightened. What are you? The boy tilted his head, expressionless. What you will be. The chains rattled violently overhead as if stirred by a storm. The tools clattered, leaping across the floor. The walls seemed to close in, stone breathing in and out. Claire backed up, heart threatening to burst. I'm not staying here. Do you hear me? I'm not. The boy's face cracked into a jagged grin. His teeth were black. They all say that. The floor gave way. Claire plummeted into darkness, her scream ripping free, echoing endlessly as she tumbled. She landed hard, pain exploding through her limbs. The flashlight spun out of reach, its beam illuminating. Roots. Thick black roots tangled around her. They pulsed, slick with a foul ichor that reeked of blood and soil. She tried to wrench free, but they tightened, biting into her flesh. The whisper returned. No longer one voice, but many. Stay. Be ours. Feed the hollow. Claire thrashed, sobbing, striking with the lever until her arms went numb. The roots bled black fluid, but only tightened further, coiling around her throat, her chest. Her vision spotted, lungs burning. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was the boy's face, hovering just above hers. Smiling. She woke to silence. Her body ached, but she was upright. She blinked, disoriented, realizing she sat in a chair, not just any chair, the one at the massive table. The family stared at her. Only now, they weren't sewn shut. Their mouths gaped open, and from within their throats poured whispers, black threads, worms of shadow. Claire looked down. Her hands were bound to the chair with pulsing roots. A plate sat in front of her, piled with rotten meat, writhing as though alive. Her scream never left her mouth. The roots inside her throat swallowed it whole. She felt something move inside her chest, sliding between her ribs, curling into her lungs. Her vision blurred. The father leaned forward, his jaw unhinging far wider than human. The mother's eyes rolled back, her skin splitting. The children chanted, voices overlapping until they became the very timbre of the house itself. We. Don't let them leave. Claire's head jerked back. Her body convulsed. The last shred of her will fought, clawed, then broke. The roots sank deeper, and she was gone. The hollow house stood silent the next morning, rain dripping from its eaves, windows blind and still. In the front parlor, a new portrait hung crooked on the wall. A woman sat among the family of 5. Her eyes were wide, her face pale, her lips closed with coarse black thread. Her name was never spoken again. But the house remembered, and it was still hungry. ChatGPT can may.